Right, I put into my Google search Protestantism in China, and there's all of this type of thing. I put something similar, might have been Protestant as opposed to Protestantism, but with China in a search on YouTube, and I was listening to a video, and it was saying that there are more Protestants in China than there are in Europe. What does it say here? In 2014, the National Conference for the 60th anniversary of the Three Self Church claimed that China has about 23.05 million to 40 million Protestants, or about 1.7% to 2.9% of the total population. Each year about 500,000 people are baptized as Protestants. January the 29th, 2016. And that is way back in 2016. It's about 4 or 5 years ago. They would have bread, and there's probably double the number by now. Where are we? China Research Center. This is from China.net. China Research Center, Protestant Christianity in the People's Republic. Home, Protestant Christianity in the People's Republic. Protestant Christianity in the People's Republic, January the 29th, 2016. Linlin, Victoria Lu, 2016, Volume 15, blah, blah, blah. Editor's note, Protestant Christianity in the People's Republic, Chinese courtyard housing under blah, blah, blah. Chinese courtyard housing under socialist market economy. Now, the way they, you frame communism, socialism, what is the difference between communism and socialism? There are very real questions now as to, and there'd be, define what communism is. Was China ever communist? Ever really communist? I haven't really gone much into that. But, and there's also the question, what the hell does socialist market economy mean? I don't know whether it's China Research Center, Chinese courtyard housing under socialist market economy. Chinese courtyard housing under socialist market economy, January the 29th, 2016. Donia Zhang, blah, blah, blah. The fall of Chinese courtyard houses. China's rapid economic growth, coupled with an unprecedented level of real estate development, have resulted in an almost wholesale destruction of traditional Siheyuan courtyard houses since the 1990s. For example, until 1949, Beijing was a completely traditional courtyard city. In the early 1950s, Beijing's inner city had 11 square kilometres, blah, blah, blah. Who gives a shit? So, and the Protestant Christianity in the People's Republic. The history of Christianity in China is a remarkable tale of the encounters between two very different civilizations, and of how a foreign religion survived, revitalized, and became a vibrant torrent in China today. The main focus of this essay is to evaluate the feature of Protestant Christianity in China after the communist takeover in 1949, comprehend its process of cross-cultural movement, and testify how the simultaneous replication and transformation of the faith in a new cultural setting has finally been indigenized. Before 1950, a century of missionary work, Historically, Christianity has made several forays into China, first with Persian Nestorian monks in the 7th century, followed by Catholic Franciscans in the 12th century, and Jesuits in the 16th century, but failed each time to establish a lasting presence, as anti-foreign politics and culture played a big role in how Christianity was accepted and rooted in Chinese soil. The arrival of missionary Robert Morrison, 1782 to 1834, to China in 1807 marked the introduction of Protestantism and the fourth major entrance of Christianity to China. Coinciding with the most violent period of expansion into Asia by all the Western imperialist nations, the Protestant missionary movement remained in China for almost 150 years before the communist takeover. Gunboats indirectly enabled the missionaries to penetrate all levels of Chinese society, but the message of their barking cannons deafened many Chinese to the serene sound of the gospel. Nevertheless, by 1920, rapid Christian expansion had resulted in not only Protestant churches with 500,000 partisans, but also a burgeoning sense of nationalism that manifested with the birth of indigenous churches. In 1922, the Church of Christ in China, CCC, organised its first National Christian Council, NCC, in Shanghai with the inaugural announcement of the Chinese Christian movement under the three self-principles: self-support, self-governance, self-propagation. Chinese Protestant leader Chen Jingyi, C.Y. Cheng, 1881 to 1939, was elected as the General Secretary and strived to promote an independent, unified and non-denominational base for Christianity in China. The turbulent forces of history in the first half of the 20th century, which shaped all aspects of China's politics, economy and culture, once again changed the fate of Protestant missionaries and Chinese Christians. In October 1949, the Communists took power, and under the banner of patriotism, the new regime started rooting out the influence of Christianity in China. As Wolfgang Frank commented, the Christian missionaries had to pay a particularly heavy price for the mistakes of their predecessors, and reaped the hatred that had been sown in the past. All 130 foreign missionary institutions and organisations, including schools and universities, were shut down, the missionary funds were frozen, and all foreign missionaries were expelled. By 1951, not a single Protestant missionary remained in mainland China, marking the end of 150 years of Protestant missionary work. Left behind were 700,000 Chinese Protestants facing an uncertain future. 1950 to 1966. From Liberation to the Cultural Revolution. In keeping with Marxist orthodoxy, the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, declared itself atheist. Maoism, or Mao Zedong, thought, as it is known in China, was the dominant state-enforced ideology. As such, the communists condemned religion as the opiate of the people. Christianity in particular was seen as something brought to China under the protection of Western gunships and foreign missionaries, as its propagators were representatives of imperialist powers. The activities of missionaries in modern Chinese history were not so much a religious or social problem as they were an international political problem, that is, cultural imperialism. However, when this foreign religion became an integral part of the culture and life of the people, it was impossible for the government to eradicate it. Therefore, a political compromise was made. As former Premier Zhou Enlai, 1898 to 1976, stated, the CCP government allowed domestic churches to function after 1949 as long as they would not collaborate with Western imperialism and were loyal to the government. In 1954, the proclamation of the Chinese Constitution, Article 88, declared that Christians, as citizens of the People's Republic of China, enjoy freedom of religious belief, but they were placed under the jurisdiction of state and party bodies. No doubt Protestant Christianity faced serious challenges when the churches desperately needed to remove the historical stigma of their religion by distancing it from its foreign heritage. As early as December 1949, Protestant church leaders had signed a long open letter entitled Message from Chinese Christians to Mission Boards Abroad that declared an end to the missionary era in China and the contestation of its legacy. We Christians in China feel the urgent necessity of re-examining our work and our relationship with the older churches abroad in the light of this historical change. The Christian movement will have its due place in the future Chinese society and will have a genuine contribution to make. Its future road will not be a bed of roses. It will suffer a purge, and many of the withered branches will be amputated. 6 months later, the Christian Manifesto was issued by the CCC in response to pressure from Premier Zhou as declared a direction of endeavour for Chinese Christianity in the construction of New China. Recognised clearly the evils that have been wrought in China by imperialism, recognised that in the past imperialism has made use of Christianity itself, and be vigilant against imperialism, especially American imperialism, in its plot to use religion in fostering the growth of reactionary forces. 40 Protestant church leaders initially signed the document, followed by 180,000 members. Eventually a total of 400,000 signatures would support this declaration of independence from the churches in the West. The CCC also pleaded unconditional compliance by accepting the direct supervision of the State Administrations of Religious Affairs, SARA, which operated underneath the United Front Work Department, UFWD, to manage the government's relations with domestic religious organisations. In addition, the CCC called for a new three-self church that was as ecumenical as it was indigenous, a church that was patriotic while remaining committed to the tenets of global Protestantism. After the Korean War, at the first National Christianity Conference in July 1954, the CCC rebranded the Three Self-Reform Movement, TSRM, as the Three Self-Patriotic Movement, TSPM. It called all Christians in China to unite under the leadership of the CCP government. At the conference, Wu Yaozong or YT Wu, 1890 to 1979, was elected chairman. Despite a few discordant voices inside of the TSPM, Protestant churches continuously operated. In 1958, the churches started joint worship services to enter a so-called post-denomination period. For 17 years, Protestant Christians survived numerous political campaigns. Then the Cultural Revolution broke out. 1966 to 1976, the Cultural Revolution. The great proletarian Cultural Revolution ironically turned out not to be cultural, proletarian, or even a revolution. It was instead a man-made disaster affecting the whole country, and Protestantism was just one of its victims. Like all other religious institutions in China, the Protestant National CCC and TSPM stopped operating. Local churches, YMCAs and YWCAs were closed. Christian life was banned, Bibles were destroyed, church buildings were confiscated, and Christian homes were looted. Christians were subjected to public humiliation, beatings, and labour camps. The catastrophe lasted for 10 years, but in the end Protestant Christians survived by practicing their faith underground. 1978 till present, the Reform era. The death of Mao Zedong in 1976 marked the end of the Cultural Revolution and the era of fanatical Maoism. Under Deng Xiaoping's 1904 to 1997 leadership, sweeping changes took place in China that had a profound impact on Protestants. Deng Xiaoping initiated the Four Modernizations movement to reform the economy, agriculture, national defense, and science and technology. He adopted a new stance on the issue of church-state relationships by calling for seeking unity, preserving differences through a fully utilised united front to make constructive use of religion. Deng wanted his party to rally all positive features and social strength to advance the reform movement. In so doing, the party relaxed its ideological control in Document 19. What is primary at the moment is the common goal of building a modernised, powerful socialist state. So the difference between believers and non-believers at this time is secondary. Period. According to Marxism, the religion will naturally disappear when the people are sufficiently educated and understand the secrets of science. It is useless then to persecute religion, as was done during the Cultural Revolution. In Article 36 of the 1982 implemented Constitution, the government promulgated religious freedom. Citizens of the People's Republic of China enjoy freedom of religious belief. No state organ, public organisation or individual may compel citizens to believe in or not to believe in any religion, nor may they discriminate against citizens who believe in or do not believe in any religion. The state protects normal religious activities. No one may make use of religion to engage in activities that disrupt public order, impair the health of citizens, or interfere with the educational system of the state. Religious bodies and religious affairs are not subject to any foreign domination. The government also formulated several important documents to further clarify the intent of the constitutional clause of religious freedom, such as the Regulation on the Management of Places for Religious Activities, 1994, the Regulation on the Management of Foreigners' Religious Activities in the PRC, 1994, the Laws for Normal Missionary Affairs and Religious Services, and the principle of separating religion from state education. The government conceded the fact that over the country's long period of historical development, religious culture in China had become a component of traditional Chinese ideological culture. Growth of Protestantism. The CCP's new religious policy allowed Christianity to surge once again. In September 1979, the first Protestant church reopened in Shanghai, followed by 11 others in addition to 4 in the outskirts of the city. Every Sunday morning, the total congregation worshipping at these churches was more than 20,000 people. In 1980, the Third National Protestant Christian Conference, NPCC, was held in Nanjing, and estimated that the total number of Protestants in China exceeded 2 million. The NPCC called all Protestants to unite under biblical scripture while applying the 3 self-principles to guide church activities. The NPCC also reopened the Nanjing Theological Seminary, NTS, and as a parallel to the national TSPM, formed the China Christian Council, new CCC, to manage church international affairs such as Bible printing and distribution, hymnal publications, and building church leadership. The Anglican Bishop Ding Guangshun, K.H. Ting, 1915 to 2012, was appointed chairman. It's going on and I'm a bit bored now. Political harmonisation. The 1982 Constitution provided new breathing space for the revival of Protestantism. Therefore, it encourages Chinese scholars to reassess the ecumenical value of Christianity and its potential impact on Chinese economic reforms. And I swear that they're fostering this because they may be aware, well, Karl Marx and Weber. What are the comparisons between Karl Marx? Karl Marx was a Jew from a long line of rabbis. Max Weber was another Jew. I'm not sure if there were any rabbis in his family. But I think Karl Marx and Max Weber were living at the same time. They may have even met. Both of them spoke German. Max Weber, well, he died in 1920. I can't remember when Karl Marx died. I can't remember when he was. I think he was born 1818. Somebody was born in 1818. Shit, I can't remember. But anyway, many Chinese scholars have answered the call. Researchers from the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, CASS, found that Christianity can be an important strength in Chinese society. They report that Christianity has shaped the structure of Western society from the bottom up and has been beneficial to the development of Western civilization. They believe that Christianity could bring similar benefits to China to promote economic growth. How did China get as rich as it did? Because of Protestantism, social stability and common morality. Among them, the market economist and ethicist Peter Zhao was the first to argue that China's economy would benefit from the spread of Christianity. His article, The Real Story Behind Chinese Economic Growth, was approved by Premier Zhu Rongji, 1928, and still alive, I assume, as required reading for the State Council's Economist Conference in 2002. Later, Zhao converted to Christianity and started the Business Christian Fellowship, BCF, focusing on the urban Christianity movement in order to find roles for Christianity in China's social transformation. Zhao claimed, "God is my chairman of the board," and openly praised the contribution of Christianity to the expansion of world civilization and the impact of Christian missionaries in 19th century Chinese history. The BCF published 10 Commandments for Business People. No fraudulent accounting book, no tax evasion, no adultery, treat employees fairly, no destruction of the environment, not to engage in immoral business in terms of both products and service, no violation of covenants, including oral and written covenants, honouring your father and your mother, loving your spouse, children and family, and loving your community, the earth, and having sex with your dog, who's having a period. Some government officials have echoed the CASS scholars' perceptions of Christianity. These CCP cadres, although bonded with the atheist communist ideology, also believe that the borrowing of Christian practices from the West will bring positive effects on Chinese society. In his Religious Media and Social Harmony, Zhou Xingping, director of the Institute of World Religion of the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, there it is, I was wondering what CASS is, and CASS is Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, stresses the ecumenical values of Christianity in the current Chinese society, as these values help with social harmony. Wang Zuan, director of the SARA, also points out that Christianity promotes love, peace and mutual understanding among peoples, which makes it a facilitator to enhance the relationship between China and the United States. Methods of religious control. Do I need to read that? But I think I found what I was looking for around here. Well, let's find on this page economy. find in-page economy. Economy. So we found economy. The CCP is aware of the current popularity of Christianity in China, as well as the historical contribution of Christianity to the economy in the West. It hopes that Christian faith, along with Chinese traditional values, can foster social stability and economic development in order to balance the pervasive materialism in Chinese society. Therefore, it encourages Chinese scholars to reassess the ecumenical value of Christianity and its potential impact on Chinese economic reforms. Many Chinese scholars have answered the call. Researchers from the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, CASS, found that Christianity can be an important strength in Chinese society. They report that Christianity has shaped the structures of Western society from the bottom up and has been beneficial to the development of Western civilization. They believe that Christianity could bring similar benefits to China to promote economic growth, social stability and common morality. Among them, the market economist and ethicist Peter Zhao was the first to argue that China's economy would benefit from the spread of Christianity. His article, The Real Story Behind Chinese Economic Growth, was approved by Premier Zhu Rongji. Now I need to read that. The Real Story Behind Chinese Economic Growth. Peter Zhao. Peter Zhao. Peter Zhao. Real story behind China's growth. China's economic growth. And it's all about fucking Jesus. Fucking Jesus. So, without Jesus, your economy cannot grow. We've got Zhao Xiao. Zhao has pioneered the studies of market economy, that is capitalism, and ethics in China, and has The Real Story Behind Chinese Economic Growth, which is Christianity, which is capitalist. Zhao Xiao, Chinese pinyin Zhao Xiao, born March 1967, is a Chinese economist who has gained attention for arguing that China's economy would benefit from the spread of Christianity. Zhao Xiao, born March 1967, age 53, Beijing, China. Alma mater, Shandong University, Nankai University, Beijing University. Occupation, economist, professor known for promoting Christianity. In 2002, he published a paper entitled Market Economies with Churches and Market Economies Without Churches, which argued that the key to America's commercial success was its churches. Zhao began to study the Bible with the intent of proving there was no truth in it, but after 3 months he admitted defeat and converted to Christianity. Career: Education, 1989, BSc Economics, Shandong University, 1995, Institute of Economics of Nankai University, Master's degree in Economics, 1999, Guanghua Management Institute of Beijing University, Doctorate in Economics. Current positions, blah, blah, blah. His principal fields of research are macroeconomy and policy analysis, state-owned enterprise reform, and market analysis and forecast. He has over 200 research publications in major economic journals in China on topics such as policy analysis on financial crisis, petroleum impact on Chinese economy, and employment and enterprise development. He is surely currently director of the Cyprus Leadership Institute in Beijing, which is, as far as I can work out, is a Christian thing. Christian capitalist. Zhao has pioneered the studies of market economy, which is capitalism, and ethics in China, and the real story behind Chinese economic growth was approved as required reading for State Council Economist Conference by former Premier Zhu Rongji. So, yeah, the real story behind Chinese economic growth. The real story from divergence to convergence, re-evaluating the history behind. What does this have to say? Please hurry up and work. So, from divergence to convergence, re-evaluating the history behind China's economic boom. Lauren Brandt, Debon Ma, and Thomas G. Rowski. Journal of Economic Literature, blah, 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 blah. Abstract. China's long-term economic dynamics pose a formidable challenge to economic historians. The Qing Empire, 1644 to 1911, the world's largest national economy before 1800, experienced a tripling of population during the 17th and 18th centuries, with no signs of diminishing per capita income. While the timing remains in dispute, a vast gap emerged between newly rich industrial nations and China's lagging economy in the wake of the Industrial Revolution. With only an unprecedented growth spurt beginning in the late 1970s, did this great divergence separating China from the global leaders substantially diminish, allowing China to regain its former standing among the world's largest economies. This essay develops an integrated framework for understanding that entire history, including both the divergence and the recent convergent trend. We explain how deeply embedded political and economic institutions that contributed to a long process of extensive growth before 1800 subsequently prevented China from capturing the benefits associated with the Industrial Revolution. During the 20th century, the gradual erosion of these historic constraints and of new obstacles erected by socialist planning eventually opened the door to China's recurrent boom. During the 20th century, the gradual erosion of these historic constraints and of new obstacles erected by socialist planning eventually opened the door to China's current boom. Our analysis links China's recent development to important elements of its past, while using recent success to provide fresh perspectives on the critical obstacles undermining earlier modernization efforts and their eventual removal. So that's just the abstract. Dear God, what the hell is an abstract? It gives you a kind of idea, a general overview of what's coming. I think that's far too in-depth for me. A lot of it I really don't understand. Christianity, but what is Zhao Shao? Oh no. What is this? Christianity in China, transformation. I've hit that, but nothing's coming up. Democracy and politics. Having examined the positive impact brought about by cultures on democracy, Samuel P. Huntington listed as follows, starting from the greatest ones: Protestant, Catholic, Orthodox, Confucianism, Islam, and African cultures. Huntington points out that the widespread of Christianity in developing countries was a main cause of the third democratic wave. He said as of 1988, Among the 46 Protestant Christian countries, 39 chose democratic systems, accounting for 57% out of 68 Christian countries. In contrast, among 58 countries of other religions, 7 were democratic, only accounting for 12%. Developed countries, United States, Japan, Germany, France, blah, blah, blah. North, so Samuel Huntington is another one. Samuel Huntington is Christianity has brought the expansion of civilization. Christian church has been miraculously in existence forever. A whole load of shit. From economic perspective, Christianity is perhaps the only religious faith which will continuously cause the expansion of a social order. China, the transformation with the cross. Samuel P. Huntington. Can I get out of here? I don't think I can get out of here. Samuel P. Huntington. Samuel P. Huntington. The real reason for China's growth. Wing Tai-Wu, Economics Department, University of California, Davis, blah, 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 blah. Let's put it on the side and see if it... Oh, Perth and West. I think, blah, blah, blah. The 15th Congress of Chinese Communist Party, CCP, in September 1997 was an important milestone in China's convergence to a normal market economy, which I think that just means capitalism, free market. The resolutions to privatise most of the state-owned sector, which is capitalism. The core, as I understand, of capitalism is the means of production are privately owned. So you privatise. China is moving towards, they wouldn't call it capitalism, they would call it socialism, but as far as I can work out, it's nothing more than capitalism with a smiley face that looks like that fat cunt called Confucius. To reduce legal discrimination against non-state and non-collective forms of ownership and to increase the economic opening to the outside world clearly reflect the CCP's recognition that economic liberalisation, economic opening and diversification of ownership structure were responsible for the high growth of the past 18 years, which I believe is proving my point. For all intents and purposes, China's economy is capitalist, and they've been moving that way. I think, not being a total expert, but I think they started moving in a capitalist direction. It was either the 80s or the end of the 90s, but they certainly have officially given up on communism, because communism is just for people that hate God, to be honest. More fundamentally, the CCP recognised that the logic of its economic reform program would eventually produce a predominantly private capitalist market economy, capitalist, that is integrated into the international division of labour, which is capitalism, capitalism, capitalism. It is therefore jarring when one looks at the academic literature written in the West and finds a group of economists claiming that China's high growth is the result of successful economic experimentation. It is claimed that this experimentation has fostered the emergence of new non-capitalist institutions that have promoted growth, and that other countries would do well to study these lessons from China. We will call this school of thought the experimentalist school, the E-School. Prominent members of the E-School include Gary Jefferson, Thomas Rowski, Barry Norton and Peter Nolan. Disputing the claims of the E-School is a group of economists who emphasise comparative analysis of reform experiences. We call the second school the Convergence School, the C-School, because it sees China's good economic performance since 1978 to be caused by the same factors behind the fast growth of the East and Southeast Asian economies, the increasing liberalisation, internationalisation and privatisation of economic activities. Privatisation of economic activities. I understand that to mean you're allowing individual members of society to be, that business is my business. It's not owned or dominated by the government. Members of the C School include Michael Bruno, Gang Feng, Jing Shao, Jeffrey Sachs and Wing Wu. The conclusions of the E School were derived by working backward from China's impressive growth to the partial economic deregulation that were implemented on many fronts and identifying the deus ex machina of the incremental reform strategy to be the ex post coherence of Chinese reforms. Specifically, China's seemingly desperate reforms have generated high growth because incremental experimentation has unleashed an unintended virtuous cycle. After 15 years, it is clear that there is substantial ex post coherence to the Chinese reform process. It should also be clear that this coherence is not the result of carefully plotted reform strategy. Indeed, during some crucial periods, the coherence of the reform process emerged in spite of, not because of, the policies of the Chinese leaders. Coherence was a characteristic of the economic environment in which the transition path unfolded, rather than of the explicit choices of policymakers. Period. There are certain critical or core features of the command economy, and once these are eliminated or weakened, the system has a tendency to devolve into another type of system. Oh fuck. I'm getting bored and it could be so long. Jesus Christ. The real reasons for China's growth. Is it the same shit? I think it might be. So, a little known role of Western economists in building a post. Ooh, Mother of God. So, keep reading the Times by creating a free account. Continue support independent journalism. Continue. What do I have to do? Set up an account. God help us, create your free account. Can't be fucked.